Romania. So it's for me also a bit of an experiment, because I always like to have some sort of co-creation during the process of a workshop, and I'm not sure about how it's going to work out today. So probably it will be a complete disaster, but we're in it together. So we have a joint disaster then. Is that okay with everyone? And I have made a presentation, and what I want to do is to skip to go to the presentation and to go back again to the full screen and see each of you. And I'm not a technical wizard, so sometimes I probably be a bit struggling with it. But it always comes back at the end, especially when Alex is saying me what to do. So that's sort of the procedure. What I want to do is, we have 2 hours to work together, and I want to have a little break after 1 hour, so for about 5 minutes, so everyone who wants to go to the loo or do something else can do that by that time. Is that okay? So that we work together for an hour, have a small break for about 5 minutes, and then return. I've got quite a big presentation where I don't think I will use I hope I won't use all my sheets, so because I think that would be a bit boring. So I'm going to invite you to do some interaction with all of us, and sometimes I'm going to ask you to work in a small group and to have some interaction there around the topic, and Alex will manage that part. So if I just say, Alex, split up, and he will do something that we split up and return after a couple of minutes here again. And now I'm going to share my screen for a moment. So we're going to talk about the topic, the power of the encounter, and I've called it "This is who we are," because this is what my latest book is called. So in Dutch, dit zijn wij. This is who we are, and it's all about meeting up with people in a professional context. And what I want to do with you is, in these 2 hours, to explore the professional encounter. And what I want to do is to look at the core of this relationship and try to find answers how we can develop this further. And during this 2 hours, I will use some TA concepts, but also other concepts from psychology, spirituality, philosophy. And what I really would like is if we can share ideas around it from the different cultural background that each of us has. So I use some thinkings from South Africa, but probably there are some nice ideas around this in Bahrain or in Slovenia about how you think about people meeting up. So it's an invitation for openness in your own thinking and in relating to others. Is that okay with each of us? Yeah? Great. And there's a check-in. I've asked you to have a candle with you to kindle a flame when you mention your name and say, well, here is, and I'm from, and I sit. And because I thought, I often open groups with a kindle a flame, each of us, and telling where you are and how you want to check in. And I thought, how would this work out when we meet up on the World Wide Web? So I'll start, and if you don't have a candle, it's okay. But I start with my candle, and I just burn it, I kindle it. And I'm Lieuwe, and I'm from Holland. And I sit in an old monastery from the 15th century where my office is. So I'm in my office. It's about 6 by 7 meters where I work with clients and small groups. So who's next? You, Sharon?
I'll go.
Yep.
Okay. So, where am I playing? Okay. I'm Lieuwe, and I am from Germany and Nigeria, and I sit in Muizenberg in the very south of South Africa in my office, and yeah, looking out at the flowers and the grey sky, and I'm feeling in a very good space for a Monday morning.
Great, thank you. Who's next?
Okay, I'll go next. Here is my candle. I've already lit it. I'm Sharon Kalinka. I'm from South Africa, but I'm in the UK at the moment. And I'm looking out at the grey sky, sitting in my bedroom because I have a one-bedroom flat and there's only 2 rooms. And I'm really looking forward to your presentation this morning.
Great, thank you, Sharon. And you have an IKEA candle.
Totally. Everything in my flat is IKEA.
Thanks.
Okay.
Who's next?
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen. Sorry, I joined the call a little bit late. And I also, I didn't, for some reason, didn't get the message about the candle. So I'll use this instead, the metal pen, which I'll imagine there's some light coming out of it.
Yeah.
I am from South Africa, born in Joburg. I'm sitting far from you, Lieuwe, just down the road in Lakeside, Muizenberg, and in the sort of office / spare bedroom of our house in Lakeside, between the Flay and the mountain.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Who's next?
I'll go next. Here's my candle. I'm Karen. I'm from Cape Town in South Africa, and I'm sitting in my office, which is a bedroom in our home, with huge windows overlooking the sports fields and the little mountains that are ahead.
Okay, great.
Glad to be with you.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. And you're leaving a bit earlier, aren't you?
I need to leave 15 minutes before the end to link up with another meeting of my peer TA group.
Okay.
Okay. For 15 minutes.
Yeah. In a group, I always say, well, go silently.
I will do that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Karen. Next.
I'll go next if nobody else is grabbing the space.
Yeah.
Lovely to be with you. I've kindled my candle and I've moved away from my desk just to give you a little bit of my view and my surroundings. I don't know if you can see it, but we're surrounded by beautiful mountains, and we're based in South Africa in the Klein Karoo. And it's a beautiful sunny day here today. Lovely to be with you guys online.
Great, thank you. We have more Sharons. Yeah.
I'll go next.
Yeah.
I'll light my candle. And I'm from Bangalore, India, and currently upgrading myself in few modalities. And I'm working with IT staff doing some soft skills training.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bogdan.
Okay. This is my candle. I'm from Romania. I'm a consultant, let's say, and I'm living outside Bucharest in a very little village. We're about 7 families here on a lake shore.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Accepting me to this webinar.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Bogdan.
Thank you.
Who's next? I suppose there are more.
I was going to go next, but is that okay?
Yeah, I see you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my name is Helen. I'm from Bahrain, and I'm just sitting at home. I don't have much background on transactional analysis in general, and I mean, I know it's a broad field and stuff, but I'd like to have some to join you guys to get some more views and information on it. It sounds really interesting. I have a little bit of a background on coaching, and I'm looking at maybe getting into counseling or psychotherapy or psychology, something like that. I'm not sure what yet, but I hope that through the seminar I can learn a little bit more. And sorry I don't have a candle, but you see a lot of light here, so yeah, thank you everybody, appreciate it.
You're a light yourself. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Andrew. Here's my handle, and if I can get my lighter to work, I will light up my life.
Great.
I'm sitting in my. I'm in South Africa. I'm in Pretoria, which is in close to Johannesburg. I am sitting in my study, my house. It's a spare room. I'm surrounded by lots and lots of mess. There's books everywhere, open, closed, notes everywhere. I seem to work in organized chaos. So, yeah, so I'm happy to be here.
Great. Yourself, you look quite organized in the...
just yeah.
Just this part. Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Who's next?
Hello.
Hello, Michael.
This is Koopmans from Athens, Greece.
Yes.
And
Greece. Okay.
right, and I am in my office, not private office. That's why I do not have the candle, and I feel very privileged to be able to attend this webinar. Thank you.
Great, great. Thank you, Cosmos. Next. Oh, Chrissy is telling, no, I can't hear you, Chrissy. No. Just type hello if you can hear me, and then you can follow us. Great. Thank you, Chrissy. Okay, welcome. Who's next?
I will go.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm from South Africa, and I'm sitting in my home office in Cape Town. And I have my candle here. With
beautiful.
The outside piece is actually from Indonesia, and I'm burning some aromatic crystals which Karen gave me, which come from India.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Has everybody checked in, or are we still waiting for people to check in?
I think
Alex
is the only one who hasn't checked in yet.
Who?
Johan.
Okay, Johan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't know how to. I can't get the image on the screen, but I am here in Johannesburg, signing in from my office, and I'm glad to be part of this.
Great, great. Welcome, welcome. And probably we'll see you later, or otherwise we'll hear your voice.
Sure.
Okay, great. So everyone checked in by now. Great. Well, we return to the screen. When I think about the professional encounter, I describe it as a professional encounter has an aim, and this encounter is always fed by a question or a problem of a client, and I think about it as being focused on the here and now relationship, so not on the past, but on what's happening here and now in someone's life and what's happening in between me and my client. And there is some shared responsibility. We have shared responsibility, but each of us has in it its own role. So I'm offering the context where we work in, and the client's role. I talk about client, but probably we can use other words, but let's keep up to client. The client has the responsibility to bring in his question, his problem, and to be willing to explore this. And an important part of the professional encounter is that the relation is a way to achieve the aim. So that's how I define for myself the professional encounter. Do you agree on this, or do you have other ideas? Someone want to add something on it? And if no one's saying a thing, I just go further. Yeah? Okay. First of all, for me, a main thing about the encounter, if I talk about think about the encounter with others, is the idea about how do you connect with yourself on a daily basis, because I think that's the main part of the work we do, that we have to connect with ourselves on a daily basis, and that we have to connect with ourselves on a weekly or a monthly basis. And for example, when I think about my own connection with myself, and I think about today I woke up early, about around 6, and I always start with a short meditation for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I do some exercises, some qigong exercises, and then I go to my office and I start with my how do you call it? I show it to you. I always use this one in a sort of a ritual. When I come in, then I start just making this noise. I took it from India when I was there, and I like it to use it as a sort of ritual in the day, as starting off my day. And during the day, I have some more rituals, and I always end up in the evening with doing some short meditation at the ending of the day for about 15 minutes. And if I think on connecting with myself on a weekly or a monthly basis, as my walking and my singing in my choir, and my connections with my work as a volunteer. So these are things that I think about connecting with myself, that helps me to make connection with myself. And I'm pretty happy with the way I'm doing this throughout these years. I've developed it in I think the last 6 or 7 years to build this in, and I feel that this connection with myself is getting stronger and stronger over the years. So my question is you to discuss in pairs. Is this possible, Alex, to make pairs? For what's the way how you connect with yourself on a daily basis, on a weekly or a monthly basis, and what's your view on the quality of this connection? And do it for about 7-8 minutes, and Alex will call you back as soon as the time is over.
Sure. Just to be sure of the time, how long do you want to give us for this conversation, Youre?
7 minutes, just a short exploration.
Okay, so I'll be assigning you in pairs into breakout rooms, and after 7 minutes I'll bring you back. So here we go.
do I also enjoy? I go into a break. Yeah.
Hi, Johan.
Yes.
How are you?
I don't know. I've lost you guys.
Are you not in a room?
Yeah, I am in the room.
You are. You are in a room with me.
Okay. How the hell does this work?
So, yeah, you and I will have a conversation about our thoughts on Lieuwe's question.
Sorry?
So what are your thoughts on Lieuwe's question?
Yeah, you know, I lost, I somehow my computer just frozen and I couldn't hear or see anything. So I went out and I came back, and so I'm sort of in the middle of nowhere here.
I see, okay. So Johan was talking about, Lieuwe was talking about
Is everyone back, Alex?
It looks like it now, yes.
Great, great. You were all on your own? Or did you join in a group, Alex?
I was with Johan.
Oh, you were, okay, okay. Does anyone want to share something about this, just in short, with a sentence or 2 sentences, about the meaning of being in contact with yourself for the encounter in your work?
I think from my time with Stephen, it was just realizing how different it can look in different ways. It's quite nice to reconnect with the awareness.
Okay, okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to say that as like a first exercise, just to think about this, it's I think getting to know yourself or getting in touch with yourself is extremely difficult, and it doesn't get any easier. Like I would have assumed that it gets easier with time, like with age and stuff, but I don't see that like as the case. I find it like a very painful thing sometimes to do. Like it's hard to keep up with and remember the details and like rationalize it and make sense out of it, because it changes all the time too. Sometimes it's not always the same. So that's what I came up with.
Okay, okay, thank you. Thank you, Hannah. Is it okay to move on? Yeah? And I'm going to share my screen again. So this is about the encounter with yourself, and I think really this is the main part. It's George Coleridge is talking about becoming a secure base, and I think in our work, in our professional lives, and probably also in our personal life, it's necessary to become a secure base for both ourselves and for our clients and for our friends, and I really think that it's necessary for us to cultivate this part of making connection to ourselves, and to also to ritualize it somehow, because I know for myself, when I don't ritualize it, I will go out of it and get away from it and just forget it in all the things that comes up to my path. So I need to do something to arrange this time for myself. Oh, just one back. In the book of Giles Barrow and Trudy Newton, there's a wonderful article from Pete Shotton, and it really helps me to think about the encounter with the other, making the encounter with the other, where he changes the phrase of I'm okay, you're okay, to I count, you count. You don't count, I don't count. And he just moved the image a bit so that I count, you count comes on the top. And for me, this is quite a meaningful change, because somehow it's more about relating to one another than the idea of I'm okay, you're okay. I'm okay, you're okay. To me, it gives some sort of distance, while I count and you count is more about you count for me. You're meaningful for me. It's meaningful for me to meet up with you here. So when we join in this experience, it's meaningful for me to join up with a group of 12, 13 people all around the world, and each one of us counts in this conversation. But is there anyone who wants to have an idea around this? What does it mean to you if we are using I count, you count instead of I'm okay, you're okay?
I'd like to add something if possible.
Yes.
Yeah. The whole idea of okayness, for I'm okay, you are okay. For me, it's a value judgment.
Yes.
It needs a reference.
Uh-huh.
Okay compared to what?
Yes.
And TA says that we should not be judgmental.
Yeah.
So that I prefer Julie Hayes' view on okayness. For her, in her models, there's no okay. Neither with plus nor with minus. It's just I, you. I am, you are. I exist, you exist.
Yeah.
Is the equivalent of I count, you count.
Yes. Yes. I see it that way. Yeah. Nice. Thank you, Bogdan.
Welcome.
Anyone else who wants to give some reflection on this idea about I count, you count, or I am, you are? I like your phrase about Bogdan about I am, because it's such an old phrase in many religions too, about thinking about I am. I am. It's part of the Bible, and it's part of quite a lot of other places. You find this phrase that I am is some sort of flame that each of us has inside him. Yeah. And
yeah, if you want to go on, I am who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And you are who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Anyone else? No? There we go. This is a thing that I adapted from Adriana Lee, where she made the connection, a cycle between I and you, where and it's quite simple, the idea, and I always like it as thinking in this way helps me to look at it. Oh, where does it go wrong in the encounter? So the first step, if I go to 1, is that I'm willing to reach out to you, and the second one is about and you willing to connect with me and listen to me and take what I give to you. And the third one is about you willing to make a movement to me, and and the fourth one is about I'm willing to embrace what you give me. That's quite a simple idea, I think, about how communication works, but it's also, I think, about the most difficult thing to do. am I really willing to connect to you when you come? Or am I still busy with things that happened today, early in the day, yesterday, or probably in my childhood, and am I in transference with you with all my experience from earlier on? So seeing you as you really needs us to be in the here and now, and being able to connect in the here and now. And that's where Adriana says that's where the we occurs. And the we is something really different from I and you. The we has some own personality, a personality of his own, fed by who you are and who I am. And a moment with each of us bringing in something, but it's more than just you and I. And Adriana uses this as physis. She called this physis. Physis, where the we occurs. And I think, and that's my addition, I think that it's fed by both my own physis and your physis. So my own physis that brings me here today in getting enthusiastic about the invitation from the South African TA Association. First of all, not thinking about how difficult it will be, but just being curious that I'm able to join in a group like this today, that I'm invited and wanting to and willing to bring something in. And this is also part of the energy that brings you in here today. The curiosity to make time to meet up with people from all over the world and to explore ideas around encountering into a relationship, and the willingness of bringing things in. And that's where I always am very aware of that I can't do it on my own. So I need the energy from other people to join in, because I can't do it on my own all the way. I need to be in contact to create new things. For example, I'm a writer. I write quite often books, and these books come from my own brain. But I'm not able. I can start writing a book, but I'm only able to finish it when I'm in contact with other people, and when I talk about it, and when they give them their ideas, when they share their thinking. And that gives me probably not only about the ideas, but more about being in contact with someone else. That gives me the energy to finish up my tasks. Do you recognize this in your own life? Or do you have an example around this? How it starts up with yourself, and then you need the connection with the others to bring it further.
Lieuwe, I'm thinking particularly of the psychological level of the contracting to make sure that the 1 to 2 and the 3 to 4 are really being, the reaching out is accepted. It's that unsaid assumptions that lie on the psychological level, and how important it is to pay care and take time to talk about that.
Yes. I think I agree with you, Karen. It's really an important part of it from the beginning of on. Yeah. Other ideas?
My thoughts are actually influenced by what Karen just shared. As I know myself, when I collaborate with somebody, I need to have regular connection with them, rather than just an initial contracting and a delivery date.
Yeah.
And if as good as the contracting might be upfront, I really benefit from having regular contact to update that contracting, and that it really gives a lot of it really fires up my physis, which then enables a much stronger physis for the we to work together.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Anyone else?
For me, in any of those moments of co-creating, being mindful of myself and mindful of the other person's need, it's when that we-ness is created, when I am.
Yeah.
That Pisces you're talking about is because there's no residue in that conversation. There is no judgment. There's nothing. It's I acknowledge you and you acknowledge me, and here we are in whatever is unfolding in the moment.
Yes. And I like your addition, and where you say it's about mindfulness, being mindful in the moment, because I think it's quite important that we are mindful and able to connect to ourselves and able to connect with what's happening in with the other, and so I think that's quite important energy. It's so funny to just want to share something about the work we are doing now, because it's so funny to I see how I'm used to look in the faces during a process and see if the connection is going on, and in this way we are working now, I can't see the faces, and I'm quite aware of how dependent I'm on seeing faces at time to check how it works. Probably I'm curious about how it works on a neurological way when you're not seeing each other, because we have those mirror neurons working all the time when we see each other and we see each other nodding. If it also works on a long distance, but probably someone can say something about this later or know something. Does anyone of you know how this works on a long distance about mirror mirroring? Everyone is silent.
I don't know anything about that, but there was something else that I wanted to say.
Okay.
And that is the question of mindfulness, or the reminding us that it's about mindfulness was important for me here, because I've also been spending a lot of time collaborating, working together with a colleague of mine on a project that we have going. Yeah. And I noticed that recently there's been so much going on, and then I was away and then he was away, so that we've kind of been taking turns in doing the work and not actually doing it together so much. And we haven't had as much time as we're used to having to actually prepare things together. Yeah. So that before we ran a workshop last week, I was actually getting a bit worried that we haven't had enough time to check in with each other to make sure that we're actually on the same page. And so my question was around, is it actually a we, or is it a sum of individual parts that we're giving the client now? Because I'm doing my thing and he's doing his thing, and we're just adding it now. And what actually happened was, supports this idea of mindfulness, because even though we didn't have much time to prepare together, when we were in the room together and the group of clients were sitting there, because we were aware of each other, it was actually fine. We each contributed our parts, but we were also able to link with each other in between and contribute to each other's parts, so that a we emerged in the moment, and we were able to be there and to do the work as we, even though we hadn't prepared it together. And that was really important for me to experience and to see happening like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Lieuwe. Thank you. So when I think about this, I think about some sources that for me are important in this during these years in my understanding of this I and you becoming a we. First of all, but that's a bit polite because I'm in South Africa now. I think of the Ubuntu thing. With this phrase, I am because we are. I really like this part connected. I know it mainly from the deep democracy idea that's developed through over the years in the Western world, which originated from Ubuntu. I always honor Muriel James in this. Muriel James is a TA woman. I think at last I heard that she was still alive, but I'm not sure. She's quite old now, and she wrote an article, I think somewhere in the 70s or 80s, about the third self that originates from me connecting to you. And if you don't know it, it's really interesting to look it up in all TA journals. And she said the third self, that, well, this is this we part, and in other places she connects it to Christianity. Martin Buber is always an important source for me, talking about I and thou. Martin Buber was a Jewish philosopher, I should call him, religious man, and he wrote a beautiful book where called I and Thou, where he says I and Thou are inseparable. It's a word pair. It's one word. We can't talk about I. We can't talk about you. We can only talk about I and Thou. And otherwise, if I don't really see you, if I don't really see you who you are, and that's another way of seeing than you looking at me and saying, oh, he has some curls in his hair and he's wearing glasses and he's wearing headphones, but just seeing me in full who I am. This is what Martin Buber is calling I and thou. And if we we aren't able to do this, we come to making objects of each other, objects instead of real persons of flesh and blood. I like the thinking in Buddhism around this, especially by Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnam Buddhist who's living in France for over decades now, because he can't return to Vietnam anymore, and he has done quite a lot of work around. He calls it interbeing. We are all interbeing. We are because of we are part of our family. We are part of our. We came from our parents, and we are part of the relationship that we have. And he says it beautifully when he talks about flowers. I say, when I see this flower, I can see the rain and the clouds and the sun shining on it. That makes it possible to let its flower grow. And I already talked about the development in neuroscience throughout the years that has learned us about the mirror neurons, and I presume you've heard about it. The mirror neurons that we all have neurologically. That when I have this, take this candle, that each of us in his mind is making the same movement. So my hands are moved by my neurological brain, and when I do this movement, each of you is firing at the same time with their own neurons. So as if you are doing the same at the same time, and they're quite further with it nowadays, because they know now that we so this is what actually is happening. So always when I think about autonomy, I don't really believe in this idea of autonomy that we have from the early 60s where TA originated from, because I myself know that I'm not that autonomous as I often think I am. What I'm very curious about, if we're here with a broad range of people from South Africa and from Bahrain and from Greece and Slovenia. If in your cultural context there are ideas about this, India, Hinduism, I think of Anand. Can someone add something from their own cultural background?
I could say something about how, like, when Easterners think about autonomy, and I think there's, I think the concept of being autonomous doesn't really exist here. It's very, very much community-based, and it's important to operate and function as a community. I've lived in the West and the East, so I have, I've seen two different sides of the coin. I much prefer, like, I think for sanity purposes, to have a community, it's important. But what I don't like about the way they are here in the Middle East so far as autonomy is how, like, it can borderline on infringing your individuality. So your individuality is very, very much threatened here. And you get out and you're individual, you're a threat to the group. But as a day-to-day life, I think having a community is phenomenal. It's just, you know, when you're sick, when you're depressed, or like when you need help or you need a job or something, like it's always, it's not isolationist. Like everybody's kind of watching out for each other, and whether or not they have the right intentions is one thing, but like that's how they function. And it does give you warmth in your life, and it gives you emotions, which I find very, very important if you want to have a healthy functioning life. So the autonomous extreme, for me personally, doesn't really suit me. Like I experienced that, and it's just too lonely. It just gets too lonely. But you have to manage the individuality and stuff, because that can be very can be threatening to them. So it's a delicate balance. And that's where.
Yeah. Thank you, Hanan. Anyone else? Anand, how is it rooted in your Indian culture?
I would tend to agree with Hannah. It's we are a community, we are a we culture, not an individual culture. And as such, it is challenging. But at the same time, there is some warmth, there is some understanding, reaching out, accepting others as they are. All that is amazing. It's amazing. And the struggle is finding my own in the larger context and maintaining that integrity of who I am. And so learning about professional encounters and taking something in deeply and reflecting and saying, how do I bring this even in my social setting? You know, how to not have judgment and drop everything and ask those strategic questions at a strategic moment to bring about that newness, a new way of looking at it, and not having expectation. So it's finding that balance. Otherwise, it's easy to become we, the royal we, and it becomes tradition. It becomes, this is the way to do, and this is the only way sometimes.
Thank you. Thank you. Last year I was in India. I had the opportunity to work there for a couple of days, twice. And I was really excited about it, because I think we really have to, are able to add to each other, from me coming from an I culture, and really have to learn about the we, and the Indian people that I met learning from the I culture that I brought in, and sustaining their own we culture. It was really fascinating to be there. Yeah, thank you, Anna. Is it different in Greece or in Slovenia or in? Are there voices from Greece or Slovenia or Zagreb? No additions on this?
Lieuwe, I'm not in Greece or Slovenia, but I can add my own voice.
Yeah. Your South African voice. Yeah.
I think there's a subtle difference between autonomy that's healthy and interdependence that's healthy, and power. And I think that often cultures evolve to have a community-based way of relating to each other, but there's power involved, power over the other, and that's the bit that I think is unhealthy about that way of being interdependent, where one is only part of the community if you do or look like or think in a certain way. I think Anand and Hanan were speaking about that as well. I think it is possible to be able to relate to other people, so not being completely autonomous, but to also be accepted for however you are in your own unique way of being. Without having to adapt. But looking at the world now, I think we're probably all very far away from being able to do that. In many cultures.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Probably a good time for a small break. First of all, a check: are we doing well? Does it work out well for you? Yes. I like it, so that's at least one that's enjoying it. But I see Anand, his finger too, coming up.
I like it too.
Okay, great. 5 minutes break and then back again. Okay. Any thinking during this 5 minutes break that need to be shared now? Wanted to be shared. No?
Yes, I wanted to say something.
Okay, Sharon.
It just brought back to me how important it is to understand the difference between the I culture and the we culture. And also to notice that during the 20th century in the West, the I culture was much stronger, and it seems to be moving more towards an awareness of the we culture now, especially in terms of systemic thinking. You know, because even when you were talking about how everything is dependent on everything else, our system, we can't discount the system. And I think that the I culture of the 20th century largely discounted the system, and I think it had some very negative outcomes. But of course, then there is the other extreme of the we culture, which then doesn't allow for individuality. And so I guess, you know, the world is probably moving, or will eventually move towards, hopefully, a balance between the I and the we, so that we can appreciate our system, which includes everything around us, as well as our individuality, to the degree that it's important that we be individuals, but that we never discount the importance of the group or the earth, actually.
Thank you, Sharon. Well, the moment you started speaking, I was thinking about, probably it's going too far behind the topic that we are, so I only want to mention it short. Especially in your South African culture, this tension is all around, I think, from the original white people in South Africa are probably very much connected to the I culture, where the black people are originally more connected to the we thinking. Is this?
Yes, I think definitely that is the case.
Yes.
But there is much more interaction now and much more overlap.
Yeah.
And people are becoming more aware.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. But that's for some other day.
Yeah.
The last few years, I'm quite inspired by the thinking around co-creative TA. Which is originally developed by Keith Tudor and Graham Summers. They wrote a nice but quite difficult book about co-creative TA. And for me, it's all about this creating of we-ness, and we-ness and the work that we do in the here and now. And they talk, when they talk about co-creative TA, they say it's about a partnership, being partners in the process, and having a shared responsibility in it, and an orientation on the here and now. When I used their ideas quite a lot for my last book around co-creative coaching, and I was thinking, is there some method behind it? Can you call co-creative work a method? And I thought, well, at the end, no, there is not really. You can't speak of a method. You can only speak about some central ideas, and these central ideas I want to share with you how I've worked with it throughout the years. A central idea is this idea around partnership, and it's already mentioned that a main part of it is the contracting. So how do we make the contract for us meeting up? It's also very connected to what Stark calls a two-person psychology. And she makes the distinction between one-person psychology, 1.5-person psychology, and two-person psychology, where a one-person psychology is about the classical way of thinking of a psychiatrist or a counselor, just listening and humming, and the only person who is really there is the client, telling about his problems or his challenges throughout life. And the 1.5-person psychology is more about the psychologist or the psychiatrist or counselor stepping into the relation, but not fully, just adding his professional part into the conversation, where a two-person psychology is always about me meeting you, me as a human being meeting up with you. So being able to create a here and now relation in intimacy. This morning I was talking with, had a supervision with an Indian colleague of us, and last time I spoke to him was about the ability to create, to be able to be in contact in the here and now. And he said, well, the more I learn this part of bringing myself in, the better I get in confrontations. And I really like that, because he said, when I didn't bring myself into the relationship, I was always fearful about confronting. And now I know that when I'm really in contact with people, I can confront them and be in touch with them throughout our connection. Do you recognize that? Yeah. Another part of the ideas behind this co-creative TA is about the here and now relating, and I like the phrase about thinking it's presume adult, presume the integrating adult, and work with this. Last week I had here in this room, I had a couple of people for supervision, and in this contact I was working with one woman on an individual base for a moment, and I asked her a question about, I'm not sure what it was, about connecting, her possibility to connect to others. And her voice, she was quite defensive, but in her message she was quite open. So we would talk about, in TA terms, probably about a covered transaction that she did. And following the idea of the original idea by Byrne that the psychological message, the body message, the voice message is more important than the content, I would have probably accessed the part of talking about what's happening with you, with your defensiveness, and probably if we would have gone further, we would have gone to probably some transference items. But when I presume it to be adult, we got another conversation. So I said to her, I see these two levels, and I just go to the part where what you're talking about where you question yourself about how to connect to others. And in our review afterwards, she said, that was quite important for me, that you took my message for just what it was, knowing that there is some defense in it, but just stayed in the here and now. So that was for me, again, an important learning, that it's important to keep people, are we able to keep people in and question them in the adult, also myself, during the process. Because when she's defensive, something happens with me. And I could go there. If I was a relational TA person, I would go and explore the counter-transference and transference relationship that we have. But I most often choose not to go there and just stay into the here and now. And for me, it works quite well. Any questions around this? Because I think I'm in a couple of bad English sentences. I just say quite a lot.
I think it's important that you said that, because the more at least the more I learn to observe and notice what is happening in a conversation, in me and in the other person, the more, the easier it is to get lured into those places that seem like there's fixing to do, and then you try to go all over the place, but that may have nothing to do with the here and now, but it may always be taking someone back to the past, and it's not always necessary. So I think it's important that you gave us that example.
And your mic is off.
Now it's on. Did you hear me before?
I heard the first sentence, but probably repeat a bit.
Okay. I said the more we learn to observe, or the more I learn to observe other people and notice what is going on, the easier it is to get lured into parts that may be difficult, or to get hooked into that defensiveness and start exploring that and where it may be coming from. And that's not always actually useful for the here and now. So it's important that you reminded us to stay aware of what is important right now and the task at hand, so that we can differentiate when does it make sense to actually go there, and when does it make more sense, when is it more useful to actually stay with what is right now and continue the conversation that way.
Thank you, Lieuwe. Yes, I really agree on this, and I think it's Graham Summers who says somewhere that we are transactional designers and not transactional analysts. And I like the phrase of us being transactional designers. So we are working and helping people to design other ways of communicating. And quite often it's not necessary to go back to the earlier years and to do the analysis work. Sometimes it's helpful, but most of the time the most helpful thing is just go and look at what's happening in the here and now, and how do you want to develop, because that's the way we develop our brain and learn other options. Other thinkings from others around this.
I'm also thinking it depends on the contract. And if I'm coaching somebody and they want to start changing their script, the sense of defensiveness could really pop up when they're starting to create new beliefs. And in fact, that's at the heart of our work. But I think how I would use it would be based on some of the models that say we can work with the there and then in the here and now.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of Tudor's model of empathy when he's saying we stay in our integrating adults, but each person does something in their parent and child and update that, but it's in the context of the quality of the relationship in the moments.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you, Karen, for the addition.
Staying in the moments, and how sometimes it can be also making new meaning of the there and then.
Yeah, that's an important thing that you add there. That when we are able to be in the here and now, it's giving new meaning to the there and then. That's what you're saying, aren't you? Yeah, great, great. Yeah, thank you. Any other thinking around this?
Lieuwe, I have a question more than my own thinking.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you acknowledge that there is something different happening on the psychological level.
Yeah.
But you don't respond to that.
Yeah.
You respond to the adult's part of the transaction, or the social level of the transaction.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, how does the psychological level stuff get transformed?
It's for me, it gets transformed. I think it gets transformed immediately, quite often. Just by me entering, connecting to the adult of the other, there's something happening for the other person. That's quite that's quite important. It's about the recognition of their thinking, knowing that they're always, even in a meeting like this, probably for some people there's some tension in breaking in and asking a question, and some tension that's probably related to the past, and well, we can go there but that's not really helpful, because I think it will occur quite often. There is some tension in stepping into a group and saying something, and but it's more important to acknowledge that people step in, and there's more learning in it and more developing in it than, for me, than going back to how it originally was created. And I think, therefore, that we are focusing too much on psychology, because the world is much bigger than only psychology. I think that in the tension in stepping forward, there's also a big biology part in it. We people are too much preoccupied with psychology. It's quite normal that we feel tension in stepping forward, because we are entering into a relationship, and that's always bringing up some fear in connecting. And if I'm focused too much on topics around transference, counter-transference, I probably invite people to go to places where they really don't have to go to, because it's all about something else than psychology. What do you think about this, Alex?
So as you were speaking, I was thinking about the contract that we have here, or maybe the assumed contract that we have here. And this is a webinar. It's not a group supervision session, and it's not a it's not group coaching or therapy.
No.
We are discussing various models cognitively or academically, and I think that there will be some shifting of the psychological level stuff, even though we're talking about it on an academic level.
Yeah.
Because we apply this to our own lives, and we are relating to each other, and we're sharing ideas.
Yeah.
So I think that the contract here is probably quite different on the professional level and the psychological level to what it is, or what it is even assumed to be if we were doing group coaching, group therapy, or group supervision. To me, that makes the biggest difference. And I suppose it depends on what the individuals want to achieve in the way that we relate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my first thought after I'd asked you the question was that by acknowledging something that exists on the psychological level, we're creating awareness. And I think that's a great step towards transformation.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the only step.
No.
Taking a risk here, it's probably the first step.
Yeah.
Is having the awareness. But what to do about it, that's the bit that I'm interested in relation to what you said.
Yeah. To me, it's sometimes just the awareness and being capable to stay with it, to be with it. So to be with the inconvenience that comes into the relationship and not acting on it, but just staying with it as being part of me. There's far more to say about this, Alex, but is it okay to leave it here?
Thank you.
Yeah. Another part that's important for me in this kind of work is about what I call the story. So we are storytellers, and what we do is we create wholeness time after time when we tell stories. When we tell stories about our life, when we tell stories about what's happening, when we tell stories what's happening to us in the future, and we're creating some awareness about what we want to be, and we always look for it as for congruency in it. So we're telling stories time and after time again to feel congruent in who we are. And an important thing is that the here and now relationship is part of this story. So when we leave after this 2 hours together, each of us will have a story about it, how we connected into this meeting, and how this is part of who you are, who we are, or we are together. So a lot of the work we do is about creating stories. This morning, and again in this supervision with this Indian colleague, we were talking about the story of his future, and he told me about who he will be in 30 years and how he will look back at his life. And I always like these stories when people talk about how they've developed and what they have gained throughout their lives, because it's such an important way of creating phases and acknowledgement for who you are deep inside yourself. And there's a Dutch guy, De Geus, he talks about we have to create memories of the future. So we have to create stories about the future to being able to live it. Yeah. And the fourth path of this not being a method is about the mud. So it's about us being willing to step into the mud. And I took this phrase from Sue Houston. She writes about it, and she calls the mud our willingness to go just there where our client is, and knowing that our own stuff somehow will be involved in it, and it's about how it works when people meet together. We just have to get connected, and sometimes it works quite well, and quite often we have to look about how do you do this, and how do I do this, and this doesn't feel that well, and that doesn't feel then that does feel well. To me, another part of it is that's important is the notion of the parallel process, as Petrushka Clarkson writes about it, that we mirror other relationships. So the client mirrors the man this morning in the supervision session mirrors the relationship that he has with his clients, and in the same way I mirror my own relationship in the relation that I have with him. So that gives the mud, and our capacity as counselors, coaches, is that we are able to step into the mud and to rise above it, and to have a look at it. So what's happening here? What's happening here with me? What's happening here with you? What's happening between us? What's happening in the process? And then be willing to go back in the mud again and struggle, and then return to an overview. Do you recognize this? So it's somehow that we have to deal with these inconvenient feelings that brings in the process in connecting with someone, because they are meaningful for the process. Any additions to this? Or questions?
Yeah, I want to add something actually. This is not speaking as like a coach, but like let's say, for example, as a coachee or somebody that has worked with somebody who's more experienced to help me with a problem, for example. I found that those people that you describe as not really getting into the mud are the ones that I really never connected with again. I never really wanted to work with again. And I never wanted to give them any reviews on Facebook or whatever. Actually, this recently happened. Like, somebody contacted me who is trying to expand her coaching business, and I don't really want to give her a Facebook review, even though I did see her like for help and stuff. But I felt that she didn't really get into the mud with me, you know. And I think it's all about empathy, and that kind of comes into business as well. I think she was very like money-minded, you know, like just finish the sessions and goodbye, you know. And I could tell when I was working with her, she was trying to block my energy. There's energy, whether it's sad or like forsaken, whatever it is, like you need to be open to it, you know what I mean? So the fact she wasn't really, I don't care to help her for her own business now, you know. And I don't think people in this profession sometimes realize that. They think too commercially, but they don't link empathy to commerce. It's related. It's completely related. So yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So your voice wasn't quite clear to me, so I couldn't hear it that good. But what I understand for you is that you, in your own experience, missed this sort of connection in earlier contexts that you had. Is that what you said?
Yeah, in contact with certain professionals who are in this industry, you know, as in they don't want to get their feelings dirty, basically. So when you describe it as getting into the mud. They don't want to get their feelings dirty, and they use like different techniques, whether it's body language, or they try to like block you, or like not really get taken to what you have to say, and so forth. And it's a very fine line. I mean, some psychologists, psychotherapists, counselors, and so forth master this. Like, they're able to deal with somebody with a massive problem and go back home and business as usual. They're normal. They get on with their lives, and they have empathy, but they're not like devastated after they speak to somebody who might be devastated, you know. But then other people do it in like more even passive aggressive ways, like this coach that I was seeing, and I just didn't feel okay to like.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Hannah.
That empathy.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Any one of us struggling with this item? Me, but others?
Youre, I'm wondering how we step into our own and the other's mud, and at the same time do what you were talking about previously, responding to the adult or social level of the message and not the psychological level.
Yeah. 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 I'm thinking about it, Alex, because I know there's some contradiction in it. As well, if I look at it as just being a normal part of us connecting together, that we go into the mud every now and then, that we have to look at how we are able to connect with each other. That's a normal social process. That's helping me to stay in the here and now. To be in contact with my own feelings, my body feelings, and create awareness around this, and being able to express it and to share it with someone is helping me to. So knowing that when I'm afraid, it starts in my belly somehow, and if I can just stay with this feeling and appreciate it and say, well, this is part of us relating to each other. What does it mean for the here and now? That's helping me. And sometimes there's also this struggle about where do I go? Do you recognize that?
Yes.
So it's not a one-to-one answer.
Yeah, I do. And I think often there's not much that can really be done about the here and now experience other than to just notice it and be with it.
Yeah. 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 And keeping the overview. So keeping the awareness about, and so it's not every 5 minutes, but being able to shift positions time after time again. And that's quite a difficult job to do, I think. Yeah, thank you. Other thinking, questions?
Something was just coming up for me when you were speaking about this, and especially with that example. So you're working with a client who's very overwhelmed, who's struggling very, very much, and you get into the mud, and your own feelings come up, and you also start struggling.
Yeah.
It's probably not just probably, it's definitely important to notice what is going on in us, and maybe like Alex said, to see it, maybe even to voice it. I guess sometimes that's appropriate and sometimes it's not. And at the same time, it's important to get back onto that meta level if you still want to be able to help the other person. Because I think if we get into the mud and then we start going under in the mud because it's sort of drowning us, then we're also not able to do our job. So I think it's a very difficult balance that there's a.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But in another example, a couple of weeks ago, I worked here with a woman who was really in an impasse in her own thinking, and she sat here on my couch, and I moved from my chair, and I sat next to her, and I said, "So we're in an impasse," and she said, "Yes," and I said. I said to her, I don't know how to move. And she said, me neither. And we sat there for about 20 minutes. And it asked so much for her and for me just to stay in the mud. But it was quite meaningful to be for 20 minutes in this mud for her and for me. And at once she started moving. So she said, if we want to go forwards, I have to move. And I said to her, that seems to me to be a good idea. So in Holland we have this sentence. I use it quite often. It's the sentence, "Let's get lost. I know the way." And I think that's part of our work, that we are able to get lost, and knowing that we are somehow know the way that brings people further. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I realize there is a certain amount of doing necessary to get to being mindful, yes, and being present.
Yeah, yeah. Explain yourself, Anand, on this. What's your thinking?
It's going back to what Alex was asking and you were responding to him. It's how it's become being aware in the moment and allowing that to be there and not doing anything. But even that itself is a doing, if you know what I mean. And then and looking and acknowledging all that can be and the struggle that we are facing and being with that. So it's just noticing and being aware and just letting any other thing go and not hanging on to it.
Yeah.
So there is a certain amount of awareness, consciousness to be in the moment as it gives birth to one moment after the other.
Yes.
And that requires a certain amount of presence and being noticing and acknowledging, and so there's a lot of doing. I guess in the beginning it's necessary.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think in being we are always doing. So inside we make all the movements we do. It's quite there's quite a lot of energy going around, and so that it's even difficult to make a distinction between being and doing. I think it's yeah. Okay. In my book, I write about 7 dimensions of the professional encounter, and some of them already were in our conversation, and I don't think we can go. We have only about 10 minutes left before we check out, so we can't go in depth to all of them. So you have to wait for the English translation. No, there's much more reading about it. But I call it dimensions because I was thinking about they are not separated. They're so interconnected. I describe it as a rainbow. So it's all the same light, but if we look at it in a special way, we can see that there are several colors in it, but they're so interconnected. And I call it awareness and not knowing, empathy, emotions and your body, and the capability to speak from your heart, creating a timeless encounter, and playing and joy. Now, for these 10 minutes, I can rush over all 7, or we can pick out 1 or 2. So which one are you the most curious about?
I would say for me, not knowing.
I would say 1, 2, and 5.
Not knowing? Is that what you said? Yeah? Okay. Hanan, you did want to say something?
Yeah, I was saying not knowing sounds interesting.
Okay. So, in a democratic way, we have decided to go to the not knowing. I probably want to share another screen with you for a moment and show you a short film. Let's see. 2 minutes, if I can find it this soon. No. Okay. I return to this one. What I would like to show you is that you have this movie from Children of a Lesser God. Do you know this movie? It's a film about a movie about a woman who's deaf who gets a relation with her teacher, and this is quite a difficult relation. And this man, William Hurt, is very willing to help her, but in the end, and to be in contact with her, but he can only use his own frame of reference as being a hearing man, as being a one who can actually hear everything, and this is his frame of reference, and he's helping this woman from his frame of reference. And in this movie, she gets very angry with him, and he just doesn't understand it because he's full of love for her and so willing to help her from his own perspective. Last year I was in India. I worked in India in Bombay for a couple of days, and I was in a 5-star hotel working. And from a Western, from my own Western frame of reference, it was a shocking experience because in this hotel I worked with 70 people, and we had 5 people available for us. One opening the tea sacket, and the other one do it in the teacup, and the other one walking to the door when I came to the door and opening the door for me, and the other one staying in the toilet and opening the water for me and giving me the towels to dry my hand. And after a couple of days, after one day, I was really confused about this because I didn't know what was happening with me, because I was looking at it from my own frame of reference, and I got a bit rebellious in it, running to the door before this a young man came to the door to open it for him. Till after one day, after that day, I said to myself, if I really want to know about this way of working and what's important, I have to be willing not to know. Just being here, not knowing, and learning about what are the important values in this country, what are the important values for this man, and I came up to the very simple idea that hospitality is one of the most important things in India, and that this man was just doing his job for the community in the hospitality that the hotel found so important, and that I had to behave as a guest there. So I had to learn to be a guest in this surrounding. So this is for me about not knowing, and this is for me about brightness. So brightness in being able to see further than my own frame of reference, knowing that in these situations it was quite clear that there was another frame of reference because I was in another culture. 2 years ago, when I worked in South Africa, it was also clear that there was another frame of reference, although less different than the Indian frame of reference. But in contact with my clients here, I really have to think about that they are, although they are seemingly from the same culture, they are from a completely different world. So I have to be willing to see further and being able to move through it and to change opinions all the time and to change ideas all the time. It's asking compassion from me with both myself and with my client. Compassion that I could punish myself from not knowing the culture of the other, but that won't help me forward. So compassion with the mistakes that I make in contact with others, and compassion with the other and his own frame of reference. And the fourth capacity is about having the courage to step into it and to move forward and to connect and to explore without feeling guilty, without feeling shy, without one of my main phrases is always, I dare to ask you all the questions that I want to ask, as long as you are willing to say no. So then I can use all the four of these capacities to move where I want, trusting the other in giving the borders to it. What's your thinking around this? Do you recognize it? Or do you want to go against it?
Yeah, I just want to say that I definitely recognize this, and it's very hard to separate yourself from what the other person is talking and saying, and adjusting your frame of reference is very challenging because different people in different countries or even in your same culture might have completely different views, about things that you might consider are like a no-brainer. I don't know if I can give an example. This is a bit maybe radical, but here people practice polygamy. And imagine if you have a client that comes to you and complains about his problems with his multiple wives, and you're so against that. It's not easy to go and give that kind of advice and really not be biased or judgmental. It takes a very open kind of person in their heads. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Helen. I see, to my surprise, and it's almost 11, so 12, so we have to finish it up. So I give you this question just to think about for yourself, and if you want to mail me about this, just mail me. The question is, how do you use diagnostics from this frame of reference? So does it fit in this frame of reference or not? So it's for your own thinking. It's almost 12, and I just want to share this with you at the end, because this is the only book of me that's translated into English. And it's called This Is Me, Becoming Who You Are Using Transactional Analysis, and it's published by SherwoodPublishing.com. It's so if you want to order it or if you want to look at it, you best can have a look there, because I think Amazon only brings it around in England. It's the publishing company of Julie Hay, and it's a book that's a sort of introduction to TA for clients in a very accessible way, as people told me. So. And before, just to check out, what I would like to hear from each of you, if you want to share something, some feedback on our meeting here today. For me, it was a bit short, but I really enjoyed it. Someone else?
For me, it was a bit frustrating because my computer stopped working every now and again, so I lost quite a bit of the conversation. So it was some interesting thoughts, but I would say overall not a very good experience for me.
No, I can understand. I can understand. Oh, I hope next time will be better, Johan.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Someone else?
Yes, thank you for reminding us of the encounter with ourselves and how important that is before we can go into any encounter with other people.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I particularly enjoyed being reminded of that contact cycle that I met before, and I forget it, and it makes so much sense to how I actually do it, but to use it as a framework to share with clients and supervisors as well. I'm very inspired by re-meeting that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
For me, after this webinar, I'm leaving with more connection, more thoughts, more awareness, and also like your way of presenting and challenging to think differently and giving some tools to.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you. Yeah.
I'd like to add to thank you for the webinar. It was, for me, it was very interesting. Two things I liked. First, your interpretation of Adrian's Lee concept, this context cycle.
Yeah.
And secondly, the idea that, first of all, we have to play in the mud before taking a shower.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the metaphor, Bogdan. Anyone else?
Yeah, thank you, Lieuwe. It was very, very interesting on a lot of levels. I've got quite a bit to think about. One of the things that really stood out for me was the encounter with the other and the looking at it differently. And it sat quite nicely with me from a relational point of view in terms of I count, you count, I don't count. It just gave me a completely different way of looking at it. And I think it's something that I'd love to unpack with my clients, because I think it'll bring about quite interesting conversation.
Yes, I think so.
Overall, it was a great experience. And as I say, I've got a lot of thinking to do myself. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you very much from me. I really appreciated the webinar. I've got lots of references to go and follow up and do some more reading, and hopefully your book too. So I also really appreciated the contact cycle and the encounter with yourself as good reminders and good things to remain present to. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah. No one else? I can't hear anyone anymore.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks. I really enjoyed everything. So.
Okay, great. Someone else?
Just my final bits. I echo much of what everybody has said. I really appreciated the encouragement to reflect on our own connecting with ourselves, and enjoyed all of the stories that you shared, Lieuwe and Bogdan. I'm really enjoying your metaphor now, taking that out of today.
Yeah, great. Okay, last call for if you want to check out some way by saying something. And otherwise, I'll blow out my candle and we probably meet up some other place. I really enjoyed it, this worldwide meeting. So thank you for the invitation and the South African TA, and probably we meet again. Bye-bye.
Lieuwe, thank you so much. On behalf of the South African Transactional Analysis Association, I think you've really contributed to some useful thinking and new perspectives on TA, which I find so great because it stretches my own theory and experience of myself. And just what's come to me when you said you're going to blow your candle out is the power of the encounter, because I feel quite sad having to blow my own candle out. And
yes,
even though I know that we can connect again anytime with technology, as wonderful as it is, there is something so special about having an in-the-moment connection with others. So thank you again.
You're welcome. And looking forward to visiting South Africa again somewhere.
We are too. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.